Hey everybody, surprise! Radio Star Murders is back. Hope you're very excited.
Emphasis on murder.
Murder and mayhem has all returned. So we're gonna try something different with this to get right into it. So we're gonna probably stop doing this as an MP3. I'll put up a little final go to YouTube video or MP3 on the MP3 feed. We'll keep to it as a YouTube thing just because I think the visual aspect helps with it running in the background, and it's a little bit easier to save work to not have to do an MP3 for it. I think that the show itself lends itself to a visual medium, seeing as it's supposed to be about music videos in the first place. Clay is here, and Clay is gonna Clay has decided to focus on the haircut, when I think, Clay, the thing about the Misfits is you have to be a beefy kind of body in order to be even considered to be able to join the Misfits, and you have to have an exercise plan that I think is regimented, scary, and intense at the same time.
It's because you got to make sure people know that even though you like goofy shit, you're not a fucking pussy.
Is it all Danzig's influence? Because every band that Danzig has flowed into has been like, we got to up our workout regiment, I think, fellas. Like,
I actually think it was kind of they were smaller dudes when they started, and they got pushed around quite a bit in the scene they were in. So they just got into bodybuilding as a way to just beef themselves up. And also they're a bunch of Italian guys from New Jersey, yeah. So it might just be
they have the body type for it in the first.
Yeah, it might just be baked into their culture. I don't know.
We're going to be talking about Dig Up Her Bones today. This is a Misfits song. You chose this one, Clay, didn't you?
Yeah, this is the first in our series on second singers, which is bands that replaced their singer and went on to continue and made music videos with that new singer. Which is
not a huge list. I was looking at the list to kind of review it, and it's like Stone Temple Pilots did it when Scott Weiland left in 2013. I was like, well, who cares? Like, I've never listened to anything after this from the Stone Temple Pilots post that period. There's only a handful. They're all famous, but there's only a handful of ones that are really successful at it.
Yeah, I think the key is there's a lot of bands that have done it, but only a few of them have been wildly successful with that second singer.
Misfits are not one of them.
Misfits are not one of them. However, so the main reason I chose this was because I wanted to talk about the Misfits, and this was the only way I could think of to shoehorn it in, because they didn't make many music videos. They made, I think, maybe 3.
This is their first one. Least.
Yeah. And they made no music videos with Danzig.
Yep.
When Danzig was the front man. They were actually only together for, well, they started in the late 70s, but they were broken up by 1983, I think.
Yep.
And they essentially more or less were kind of obscure until the early to mid 90s, when they started making a comeback from bands like Metallica covering them, Guns N' Roses covering them. They started to get a lot more press. So 15 years after they broke up, and after a number of legal battles between the rest of the band and Glen Danzig, they put the band back together with a new singer named Michael Graves, and put out an album called American Psycho. And this was the first, possibly only single off of it, called Dig Up Your Bones.
Yep.
And I'll tell you what happens in this video if you want to hear about it.
Sure. Well, let me say one thing before you go into that.
Sure.
I think you're understating the amount of Misfits important is that the Misfits t-shirt logo is like a standard issue teenage high school getting into punk outfit. Even if you've never heard the Misfits, you know the logo and what the band name is from that t-shirt.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they are it's a really interesting story with them, because they are arguably one of the most influential punk bands who were around, but their first album for 5 years after they recorded it.
Yeah. And
by the time it came out, all of the big first wave punk bands had already become a thing and become popular, or a lot of them had become a thing and kind of flamed out at that point. So they have a really interesting history of not quite being able to put out albums in a timely manner. Their first album took them 5 years to put it out. Their second album didn't come out until 1997, which was after this one. So it's a really, no, I'm sorry, that's not true. They had one more come out in the 80s, and then they had a third album, which is actually, if I remember correctly, technically their first album that just never came out. and that didn't come out until like 1998.
Yep.
So they've got a really interesting a history of kind of
'Cause-
very much a DIY band.
Yeah, their greatest hits is a couple albums worth of songs, and that's all Danzig at that point.
And that's the popularity of those is what drove Jerry Only, the bass player, and the rest of the band to reform.
Yeah,
and specifically because Danzig was getting all this money and they weren't getting anything.
Yeah,
so they had to figure out a way to continue to make money off the band. And I would argue this era of the band is generally maligned, I think, by a lot of people simply because it doesn't feature Danzig.
Yeah.
And I think there's kind of a Sammy Hagar, David Lee Roth kind of thing going on, depending on what you like. And I had never listened to this era of the band. I had only listened to the Danzig stuff just because I had heard that this stuff wasn't really good. I recently started listening to it. I actually think it's pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm.
It's at least this first album anyway, I think is really, really solid. But to get into the video in Dig Up Her Bones, after staring directly into your friend's older brother's sweet new laser projector, the iconic Crimson Ghost welcomes you and the guy or girl you just met at Hot Topic to follow it into an overgrown cemetery where a recent art college dropout asks you for directions. All the while, an equally dramatic band with questionable hair and possibly severe anemia plays for a rowdy crowd and features a guitar player who I swear to God looks just like Benedict Cumberbatch on the Super Shredder serum. Along the way, we're treated to quick cuts from classic Frankenstein movies and a call to engage in some casual grave robbing. When you put all of this into a blender, you end up with the end of a 15-year hiatus and return to form with a brand new singer of one of the most unique, influential bands in punk history, the Misfits.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to get rid of this thing because it's actually really annoying.
I was watching an interview with him, the guitar player, and besides Doyle Frankenstein. Yeah, besides the first, the highest rated comment, which killed me, was it was a guitar tech video, and so it was like a guitar focused thing. The first YouTube comment was, "Who cares about his guitar tips? Can he tell us what his exercise regimen is?" He is
huge.
He's huge for like a 65-year-old man at this point. He's like still in shape. But the other funny thing is he had the hair, and he's clearly just gotten very good at working with it and like getting around the fact that it's obviously obscuring his vision for a good portion of the time. He just moved his head very well to the point where you realize this guy's familiar with having a little thread of hair sticking out of his face.
Yeah. They are a very unique looking band, and they were sort of the only band at the time when they started doing this sort of I guess horror punk is the best way to put it, because all of their stuff is heavily rooted in old horror movie imagery, and a lot of their songs are based off of old horror movies.
Yep.
I think the biggest difference between the post Danzig and the Danzig era is that Danzig brought a lot of anger to the band, I think. Mm-hmm. And their songs, while still kind of ridiculous, are a lot more edgy and kind of angry. Because Dig Up Her Bones, I think is a great song. I think it's a really catchy song. This came out in 1997. I'm kind of shocked this wasn't a bigger hit, because you're right in the pocket of the 90s punk and pop punk boom. I don't know why the Misfits didn't make a bigger splash. Maybe it's because it's a bunch of the guys who are almost 40 playing punk music, and all the bands that were popular at the time were like, young guys.
I actually think they're no longer a punk band at this point, which is maybe why they didn't quite fit in. They almost
but this song doesn't sound out of step with anything else that was like if Blink-182 played this song or Green Day, it would have been a smash.
I think this is much more metal than punk at this point. This is it's obviously punk influenced, but it sounds much more metal down to the vocals. Like the reason why, like I prefer the pre-Danzig stuff, even though objectively this song is easier to listen to than the Danzig stuff. The Danzig stuff is more obviously punk music. It's like very lo-fi, sort of like clumsy. This is production to 11. It's like the guitar is just crunched down to nothing, and then like soaring metal vocals with the da 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 da. And Danzig wasn't really that. Danzig's voice is really unique, but he's never like an operatic metal singer, I wouldn't say. Like he's
No, he's more of a crooner.
Yeah, it's a crooner.
You know,
he's a lounge singer stuck in a punk band. Yeah.
Yeah, he's essentially he's doing a Roy Orbison Elvis Presley impression with a punk band behind him, essentially. Yeah.
I'm still surprised that, based on the fact that they were a punk band for 2 decades before this, that they never really caught on with this. But I think that this is not really the sound of the punk revival that happened in the mid 90s. It's much more of a, like what was happening in the early 90s with metal, with like Suicidal Tendencies and stuff. It sounds a little bit more like that than
really. Because
anything.
When I think of Suicidal Tendencies, I think something a little bit harder edge and a little bit tougher to what's the word I'm looking to? Challenging. Let's put it that way.
You think it is more? I think it's more metally in that it's like more guitar solo focused kind of stuff. It's more intricate than this. This is a brutal, just endless crunching guitar song that never breaks away from that. But I think the sound is just very metal to me in a way.
I think the difference probably, I still think this is like right on the line for the era. I think the difference is it's actually a lot darker, musically and also lyrically, but it's the punk of the era was a lot more positive isn't the right word, but it was brighter.
Yeah,
you know, Blink-182
it's poppy
is
in that sense.
Playing, it's playing poppy, brighter songs. Green Day's playing even the darker Green Day songs are pretty bright.
Yep.
This is a lot darker than most of that stuff, so maybe that's why it didn't catch on.
That's probably the metal influence, like because the gothic horror thing is much more of a metal thing than a punk thing that they really tracked along. So while the Misfits were a punk band that sort of focused on horror stuff, that's much more in the genre of a metal band than a punk band, I think. Like they're not black metal or anything like that, but the topics that they're talking about are kind of punks back then probably would have thought that they were kind of silly, what they were talking about, sort of like punk tends to have this sort of like seriousness to its nature that it takes reality very seriously. They
I feel like they kind of, again, I think it was a problem of how long it took them to kind of really get going, because I know that when they started they were accepted more or less, but then by the time they started doing larger scale tours, I know that there's an infamous show where they played in San Francisco, and the San Francisco punk scene at the time was exactly what you're saying. It was very serious. Yeah. So when the Misfits showed up, covered in corpse paint and singing songs about Night of the Living Dead, they kind of got stuff thrown at them until a fight broke out.
Yeah.
And it is weird. I always found, I love the Misfits. They were kind of, I was never a big punk person. And I was always kind of dancing around it. Like I knew a lot of people who liked it in high school, but the pop punk stuff never really worked for me. Even some of the stuff that wasn't quite pop never really worked for me. And it wasn't until I was introduced to the Misfits that I found like, okay, that's my in. Mm-hmm. because of I've always been more of a metal person. But because of the theatricality of it, because of the stuff they're singing about, and they're a punk band that mostly, I assume because of Danzig, has a very melodic element to it. Yeah. Like Danzig's singing is very melodic. It's not really punk. Some of them are. Like there's a later album called Earth AD where it's very hard edged and it's almost a thrash album. And they're doing a lot less melodic stuff there, and it's still really good, but it's not as musical as some of the earlier stuff. And so finding a band like this that was so eccentric and had a different take on punk vocals while also still being legitimately a punk band. Yeah. They really clicked with me. And I've never quite clicked with Danzig outside of the Misfits. Mm-hmm. There's obviously Mother, which is undeniably a great song. Yeah. But all of his other stuff has never really clicked with me the way the Misfits has.
They're funny to me because they actually made me wonder, like I think when we were sort of reviving this idea for Radio Stars to do it again, I think that we potentially look at the show differently. And I thought that this was an interesting choice as to what you think about Radio Star Murders, the show itself, where the Misfits are so visual that I think that really the only reason to me that they achieved any level of like bigness or like scale or success is really down to the fact that they're they're a very unique band to look at. Like you could look at the silhouettes of the Misfits and you'd be like, that's the Misfits who are standing right there.
Right.
I think that as a punk band, they're fairly uninteresting. Like their greatest hits album was pretty boring, I thought, like listening to it. Like eventually they get a little bit more interesting. Later on, they almost have a like a psychobilly sound. They start putting keyboards and stuff into it, and the crooning of Danzig starts to come across. But this one, I liked this song better than all of the earlier Misfits stuff. But I think that this is more of a generic song in some ways. Like if this was the Misfits, I think they'd be even a less successful band. Not that they're not successful, but I think
I was just going to say, if this was the first thing that the Misfits ever did, like if the Misfits didn't exist in the 80s and they were a new band who came out in 1997 and this is what you got, I agree. I don't think they probably would have done very well.
yeah and it's
not to say it's not a bad song. It's just
it's an aesthetically it's a auditorily pleasing song in a way that the Misfits songs aren't. The Misfits songs are like kind of work to listen to. Like it's not particularly pleasant. The production's not very good. It's all intentional. It's the punk rock aesthetic and everything like that. Mm-hmm. This has that clean production that will turn a C- of a song into like a B-, and you kind of like, I can listen. Mm-hmm. I can deal with this. This is okay. But I think that the Misfits as a band are way more interesting as a Danzig thing, or Danzig's era was a more interesting era of the Misfits.
Yeah, I mean, this, generally what we do in the show is we kind of approach, or at least we try to approach music videos as little movies and break them down that way. This is not a video to do that with. It's like I said, the only reason I picked it was because I wanted to talk about the Misfits, because this video it's about as stock as you can get. It's just
live footage with a little bit of B-roll sort of the singer doing something.
Yeah, and it's oddly both the most Misfits. It's a perfectly Misfits video, but it's also very much not a Misfits video, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like it's because you're getting the feel of what they look like and everything. But when I think of the Misfits doing a music video, I think of something a lot weirder.
Yeah.
Like I feel like if they weren't trying to do something that was right down the middle, like this feels like they're trying to have a hit.
Yep.
And which, good on them. You got to get paid.
Yep.
After 25 years of not making any money on your band that everybody else loves and has inspired
all those t-shirts
the biggest bands in the world. Yeah. But yeah, this feels oddly safe as a music video for the Misfits.
Yeah. You want to talk about what the song's about? Do you think there's anything deeper than what these the lyrics are? Here, I'll switch us over to the lyrics and see if this works for a little bit. It's about digging up a dead lover, right? Is there anything else going on here? Yeah. Point me to the sky above. I can't get there on my own. He wants to get to heaven to see her, I assume, but instead he has to walk to the graveyard and dig up her bones in order to be with her again. I've seen the demon's face. I've heard of the death place. I fall on my knees in praise of the horrible things that took her away. And death climbs up steps one by one to give you the rose that's been burned by her son. Pretty straight ahead.
I think it's a pretty good song. I mean, it's like, it's not reinventing the wheel or anything, but it's the imagery's pretty good. I think that hook is great.
It's a good chorus. It is a good chorus.
Yeah, it sticks in your head really well. The verses are, again, they're pleasant to listen to. We sound like such old men talking about the Misfits being like, I like this one because it's more pleasant to hear.
It's like DePaul. And this is a very pleasant experience to listen to this. Yeah, I think it's a fine song. I think it really amplifies the music video does too, of just like I can see the reason why the Misfits didn't excel tremendously. Like I think that it's a lot of flash, and the music is there's a couple bands like this that I'm not going to be able to think of now, but it's like the music is almost secondary to the performance aspect of things. People would probably say Kiss is like that, but even I think Kiss has more of like an arena rock thing going on than the Misfits do as a punk rock thing.
Sure.
But yeah, I like this song. I still, if I was to like intellectually get into Misfits, I think I would just stick with the original Danzig era stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but yeah, they're such a visual band that I just really want to I want to know more about their exercise routine and like what this is all about, like what the consistency of this look over the decades and everything like that. That's the hard part to me.
I think the strangest thing to me is the juxtaposition of Michael Graves, the singer, and the rest of the band in this video, because he is portrayed kind of like this delicate goth flower.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the band are just these like hulking, we're
Shirtless.
gonna break every string on our guitar and we're gonna, smash you in the face when we're done.
Yeah.
And it's just a really interesting contrast, because it's like he's not an out of shape guy. He's not like a scrawny dude.
He's not chiseled. He's just kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, he's a normal looking guy, but put in between Doyle and Jerry and even the drummer, it's like
Dr.
It's like
Chud.
you wonder if he wandered into the wrong show, or maybe it's like a band of older brothers who are just trying to help out their younger brother who wants to front a band. You know? They're all there ready to beat up anyone who wants to make fun of their kid brother.
It's with Weezer was kind of, when the Weezer original bassist left, they replaced him with someone who is like just much bigger. Like he's kind of a big guy, and it was like they took a member of Danzig or the Misfits and they just put a sweater vest and some glasses on and were like, now you're part of Weezer.
I remember that guy.
Yeah.
I remember I went to see Weezer, which was the worst concert experience of my life.
I saw two Weezer concerts. One was awful and one was fantastic. I saw one very early and I think they've evolved, but go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. My experience honestly had nothing to do with the band itself.
Oh,
it was
interesting.
all the circumstances around it. But
Gotcha.
if we ever cover Weezer, I'll talk about that. But I remember watching, I think it was shortly after they replaced the bass player. And I remember I was like, I couldn't take my eyes off this guy because he looked so out of place.
Yeah.
He looked like, do you remember the, when way back the Rock was hosting SNL and they did this bit where he was playing Superman, but he was dressed as Clark Kent, but it's the Rock. So he's got this tight business suit on that he's like bursting out of while trying to keep up his cover of being Clark Kent. That's what it felt like to me. It was like this big, fit dude that they just, took the last guy's stuff. They didn't even get him to fit him. They just wrapped it around him. So he's there playing bass and his muscles are just bulging out through whatever the sweater is.
The sweater vest just can't contain what's being held underneath. No, we had the same thought because he was such a funny, because all the other ones are just kind of nerdy looking guys, like smaller guys. And he just comes in and is like, I play the bass. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, how do you feel about Michael Graves versus Danzig as a singer?
Graves is a better generic singer, but Danzig is the Misfits. So it's like that's the sound that you're going to expect from it. I like anyone who has a vaguely Elvis-y thing to their voice. Like he has that kind of quality. I don't know how you would describe it except for the fact that it's kind of Elvis-y. Like he's the one that pops to mind for me. But Graves is fine. But I think that he just ties into this song is more of just the generic of the era metal punk song to me, and his voice kind of fits that. Danzig, we had a discussion on the Discord about it. Like Danzig is one of those people that Danzig kind of is the band to me. Like once you take him away, you no longer really have the band. I know once you're a fan of a band, you no longer hold that attitude because you're like, well, the guitar player actually wrote 25% of the songs on this album, but it's like the general public doesn't really care about that. He's kind of the same.
Yeah, I think Michael Graves is actually a great choice for what they're trying to do in the era that they're trying to make a comeback. I think you're right. He's got a great down the middle kind of voice, but he's also has enough of that Elvis-y kind of twang to it where I can see him doing the Danzig stuff pretty well. Yeah. Without him being a copy. It's not like they just found a guy who sings exactly like Danzig. Right. They found someone who's a little bit to the left or a little bit to the, well, in Michael Graves' case, a little bit to the right. Yeah. If you know anything about Michael Graves as a person. But who's a little bit off center from that thing, who can still do that stuff, but doesn't just sound like he's doing a Danzig impression. Yeah. Yeah. But comparing the two of them, it's like Michael Graves could have been anybody, but Danzig is one of the most unique voices in music. Yeah. Yeah. for better or worse.
I guess that's pretty much it. We'll call it a day there. That's a good one for a return to Danzig and the Misfits, I think. We'll continue our second singer thing with the next video, which is going to be Genesis's No Son of Mine, which is my choice. And we'll see. I think they're very different songs and videos, so we'll have a different perspective.
Well, there's
a different conversation.
There's less grave robbing, but there's more child abuse. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe they even out. I'm not sure.
Although I guess we can talk about it. I have a lot of questions about No Son of Mine. But we'll get into it. And I think that it's a totally different thing because I don't consider this band to be a success post Danzig, where Genesis is only known post Peter Gabriel. So we'll go from there. It's a different kind of thing. But anyway, thank you guys for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, give it a thumbs up. It's very kind of you and much appreciated. And we'll be back in a week or two with the next one, Genesis, No Son of Mine. See ya.